W drugim odcinku Alan Wake Remastered. Moi drodzy, tak, Alan Wake Remastered, drugi odcinek. Naciśnij dowolny przycisk. Nie widziałem. Kontynuuj grę. Jesteśmy tutaj, gdzie żeśmy ostatnio mniej więcej skończyli.
Among Alice's things was a book, The Creator's Dilemma, by a Dr. Emil Hartman. Seeing the book brought back my fight with Alice. I didn't like it, and I didn't like the guy's smug face on the cover either.
Czekajcie. Przy przypadek gdzieś się poddaliłem. Teraz będę mieli... Teraz jest chyba lepiej. Tak.
Designing the environments, we are making full use of the diversity of nature in Pacific Northwest region. In this episode, we find Alan Wake trashed in a car, unable to climb back to the road, and facing a long hike through the forest to reach a distant gas station where he hopes to find help. The area is a rocky, forested valley. He has to go through a logging site and also a marshland that follows the bottom of the valley and a river crossing. In the end, there is a vintage old gas station to explore, so really it's a visually very interesting location.
Myślę, że będę nagrywać jeszcze krótszych odcinków.
Hello?
No wiecie.
The man turned to face me. His face was covered in shadows. It was hard to make him out in the darkness of the forest that surrounded us, but the axe he lifted was plain to see. It glistened with the blood of his victim. He grinned madly. The shadows were alive, distorting his features. It was a scene from a nightmare, but I was awake. Departure by Alan Wake.
Well, as you can see, Wake has just found his first manuscript pages. They just sort of floated down from an unearthly light. And the manuscript is really one of our main storytelling tools in the whole thing, and one of our most important concepts in the entire game. And that stuff was actually really difficult to write because you don't have a lot of space there. You have a couple of paragraphs, and you kind of need to be able to tell little stories.
Yeah, and I also think that manuscript pages are a big part of the whole Alan Wake experience. While it also tells a lot about the world itself, it also gives you a really deep history of different characters in the game.
Yeah, and it feels kind of natural too because we sort of made the pages a part of the whole thing. They're not just sort of random things in the on the sideline, but they're actually something that's really a part of the plot because they really are the plot.
Exactly, and I especially like the idea how certain pages actually predict some events that are going to occur in the future.
Yeah, we do a lot of foreshadowing there, but it's not, we don't really do the kind of thing where we sort of, hint at something. We actually come right out and flat out, say it, because that's sort of, we want to prove the player that,
Failed. Deposit. liquid. Fair and square.
Jaki... O, pobierz. Tu mamy pistolet i latareczkę, okej. To mamy...
During your
Yes.
it's the latest.
Bright Falls Sheriff Station.
Let you
I głupie zginienie. Po prostu głupie umarło.
during your crying. It's the latest.
Yes.
Bright Falls Sheriff Station.
Co to ma być?
Even though most of the enemies attack you with melee weapons, some of them are able to use ranged weapons as well. I think it's way cooler than some of the destroying stuff that you guys now showing. Or maybe I just got tired of that in our previous games.
Concussion. I never fired a gun outside a shooting range, and now I just killed someone. Or something. There were no bodies. They just disappeared. If I was dreaming, it felt real enough to make me sick. Eerie hand-painted graffiti was revealed by my flashlight. Someone had hidden a chest of supplies near it.
O. Okej. Jakie zdjęcie? Okej, gdzieś się tutaj zobaczcie, czy tam gdzieś nie ma. Dobra, idziemy dalej.
The dark forest was the last place I wanted to go, but I had no choice. I had to get to the gas station.
O. Podnieś stronę. chyba wspomnienia.
What the hell was that? When I saw the river below, something uncoiled itself inside my head. I realized that I'd have to find...
Wake's newfound fear of water is a result of his plunge into Cauldron Lake. Of course, at this point in the story, he doesn't know what happened to him, he doesn't remember any of it, but on some subconscious level, he knows that he's been violated, and he associates that with the water.
Ja teraz lubię za tematem, może, no wiecie, możemy znaleźć herbatę, termos z pieczem, wiecie, albo jakąś tą stronę jego książki. Tam coś jest. Tak, dobrze. O!
Departure by Alan Wake.
Proszę bardzo.
The man turned to face me. His face was covered in shadows. It was hard to make him out in the darkness of the forest that surrounded us, but the axe he lifted was plain to see. It glistened with the blood of his victim. He grinned madly. The shadows were alive, distorting his features. It was a scene from a nightmare, but I was awake. The taking stood before me. It was impossible to focus on it, as if it stood in a blind spot caused by a brain tumor and eye disease. It was bleeding shadows like ink underwater, like a cloud of blood from a shark bite. I was terrified. I squeezed the flashlight like my life depended on it, willing it to stop coming any closer. Suddenly something gave, and the light seemed to shine brighter.
Brakuje jednej strony.
I heard them before I saw them, swooping down from the sky and screeching as they came. I spun around just as the cloud was upon me. For an instant, I stared into 100 dead eyes, black pearls glittering in the darkness. I raised the flashlight and the swarm exploded like fireworks. Feathers burned, turned into ash. I couldn't hear my scream above theirs.
O, teraz będzie dobrze. Ups. O, tak.
At first I kept finding the pages as if by accident. The book I couldn't remember was either a terrible and true prophecy or an act of creation that had rewritten the world. I began to hunt the pages feverishly, for they held the answer to the mystery. With it, I could save myself. With it, I could save Alice. I stepped into the gas station's garage. It was dark and quiet. The place was a mess. It looked like someone trashed the place or that there'd been some kind of fight. Light spilled into the room through an open door at the back, and I made my way toward it. Without any warning, I was blinded by a bright light. An old portable TV on the shelf had come alive by itself. Impossibly, I could see myself on the screen, talking like a madman. The cabin on Cauldron Lake? She asked. The sheriff looked at me suspiciously. The early morning light flooded through the office windows. I would probably never have gotten out of the woods alive without her help, but I couldn't tell her the truth of what I'd faced the previous night. She'd think I was lying or crazy. She'd lock me up, and she wouldn't help me find Alice. Stucky spat on the garage floor and tried to shake the cobwebs from his head. Ever since the couple never showed to pick up the keys, things had been fuzzy. Something, a feeling caught his attention. Stucky looked up and stared as his brain tried in vain to process the horror before him. He stumbled back, knocking over a can of oil. A black pool spread across the floor while he struggled for a brief moment, then let go as the unrelenting darkness engulfed him. Rose knew she had been gushing, but right now she didn't care. As far as she was concerned, her brief meeting with Alan Wake was literally the high point of her life. She watched as he got in the car with his wife. She was pretty, confident, at ease with Wake. Not like Rose. They were perfect for each other. She'd have given anything to be called their friend. Barry Wheeler was bouncing off the walls. He jumped on a plane after his calls were ignored by both Al and Alice for several days. It could mean that they were both on a second honeymoon, but Barry didn't buy it. Al had been way too unstable for that, not sleeping, messed up. Barry had years of experience dealing with Alan Wake, and he couldn't ignore it. Something was wrong.
Okej. Jeszcze mam brakuje 3 tutaj strony, więc... Lecimy dalej.
Stucky was still out there, in the dark, stalking me. Szczałka. O co chodzi z tym szczałką? Nie wiem. The staircase was broken. I had to make my way up some other way. I couldn't stay here. There had to be a way to get up there. There was no power. There was bound to be a generator somewhere at the logging site.
Wiecie co, za dużo mam amunicji, a mało mam baterii.
With all this forestry equipment around, there had to be something I could use to reach the top.
Strzelba.
outside for a breath of fresh air, and what a night. I know most of you are probably in your beds by now, but if you're still up and around, take a moment. Step outside for a spell and breathe in deep. The weather's absolutely still. The sky is crystal clear. It's like the forest is quietly breathing along with you. To you listeners know, I'm a night owl, and it's on nights like this I wish I wasn't cooped up in the studio. Makes an old man like me wish I could just roll wild. But here I am, and it would keep you company all night long if I weren't. It looks like I'm not the only one staying up late. Caller, you're on the air.
Hey, Patty, Maurice Horton.
Hello, Maurice. What are you up to?
Well, I was just taking Toby on his walk.
Oh, isn't it beautiful out there?
Sure, but Pat, the reason I called is that Toby heard something ruffle in the undergrowth and took off after it, and I couldn't find it.
Probably a rabbit.
Sure, Toby loves rabbits.
Well, sure.
Anyway, I figured that, if anyone runs into Toby, they could grab him. My number's on his collar.
And Toby's a friendly dog?
Toby loves me. Usually he comes back, but we were pretty far from home, and it sounds like he went pretty wild there. Great dog, but numbers so good.
Well, Maurice, it's out there now. Hope Toby comes home soon.
Yeah, thank you.
You have a good night now.
Okej.
At first, I kept finding the pages as if by accident. The book I couldn't remember was either a terrible and true prophecy or an act of creation that had rewritten the world. I began to hunt the pages feverishly, for they held the answer to the mystery. With it, I could save myself. With it, I could save Alice.
To w sumie byliśmy chyba uczyszczali, ale...
The gas station was closer now.
Most of the gameplay locations we have in the game incorporate the idea of a journey into them. It basically means that we try to show where player is coming from and where he's going to as often as possible. In the beginning of episode 1, this meant that we showed the lighthouse whenever possible, and of course now we use the gas station in similar role.
Naciskałem na unik, a on sobie tylko... Tego już nie słyszymy, bo już żeśmy to wysłyszeli, odsłuchali.
The gas station was closer now. It's like...
Most of the gameplay locations we have in the game incorporate the idea of a journey into them. It basically means that we try to show where player is coming from and where he's going to as often as possible. In the beginning of episode 1, this meant that we showed the lighthouse whenever possible, and of course now we use the gas station in similar role.
Here we can see some of the nasty names that we have. We call them flankers because they're trying to circle around you and stab you in the back. Though they're quite easy to take out.
Science. It bestows immortality on those who advance it, benefit all of mankind. Newton, Einstein, Sagan, princes among men. But the price for such a legacy is steep indeed. Night squares. Tonight's episode, a quantum suicide. Our lives are already taking a courageous man to change his script, having called a press conference. Very cold that demonstrate.
Lecimy dalej.
Stucky's body vanished, leaving behind only a lifetime of nightmares.
You're about thought to find the first TV at the gas station where we see Alan Wake raving like a lunatic. Cynthia Weaver actually talks about a similar thing later on in the game when she mentions that Thomas Zane has been talking to her from beyond and from television, and it's kind of a similar thing. Wake isn't aware of how it's happening, but that's what it is. We are thinking of Alan Wake as a kind of a sum of three parts actually. Our writing, Ilkka Villi's face and body language, and Matthew Poretta's voice. And since we shot this stuff on video instead of producing it with our game engine, that's actually Alan Wake at his purest, you could say. And, you know, not coincidentally, it's also Alan Wake at his craziest.
The garage was a mess. It looked like someone had trashed the place, or that there'd been some kind of fight.
I'll write it. I'll keep writing. Outside there's only darkness. Outside the cabin, outside the story, there's only darkness. I can feel her presence in the dark. Just now, I can smell her perfume in the room. I'll reach her, I'll fix her. I'll bring her back. The story will come true. If I stop, she's lost.
I don't believe this.
It'd been me on the TV, talking crazy. Was I losing my mind?
Będziecie się zastanowić i przeczytać. My lecimy niestety dalej. No a ten o... Przeczytamy wciąż.
Great Falls Sheriff Station.
Oh, thank God, Sheriff.
O Jezu, co się stało?
candy-colored clown they call the Sandman tiptoes to my room every night.
O,
Just a sprinkle stardust and
koniec odcinka pierwszego. Co?
everything is alright. I close my eyes.
W powszednim odcinku. Odcinek drugi. Opętany. Nowy Jork. 3 lata wcześniej. 3 lata wcześniej.
Honey, I'm home.
Back here, sweetie. How was it?
Osiągnięto punkt zapisu. Więc co, dziękuję za oglądanie, trzymajcie się, no i na że pamiętajcie, jeśli subicie kanał, to zawsze łapkę w górę. No i widzimy się w kolejnym odcinku Alan Wake Remastered. Pa pa! Subskrybujcie kanał, to zawsze łapkę w górę i komentarz. Widzimy się w kolejnym odcinku.